The Last Duel was directed by Ridley Scott and stars a plethora of really great actors, and is a movie that I actually saw a few days ago. But I was trying to figure out how to word my review and what exactly to say in it, and so it took me a while to get this thing off the ground, so I apologize if this is a little late, but without further ado, here we go. Divided into 3 chapters and based on true events, this movie tells the story of Jean de Carouge, a knight who challenges his friend and squire Jacques Legris to a judicial duel after Carouge's wife Marguerite accuses Legris of raping her. The 3 chapters that it's divided into essentially tell each side of the story from the 3 main leads over here, and you see how the story plays out in each way and how they saw it in their minds play out, and eventually leading up to what could be the truth of the entire thing, like what's the one that stands out as this one's the accurate version. And as you're watching it, the movie asks you questions. It shows you the downfall of Legris and de Carouge, how they used to be friends at one point in time, but over the years things have happened that have resulted in that souring and what may have led to this incident and what has eventually brought them to a point where they were friends and now they're fighting in a duel to the death. And so the film is very compelling and fascinating to watch in that regard, and it is very well directed. Right out the gate, I'll give this praise. Ridley Scott has still got it, and this is one of his best movies in years. He does a really great job of directing not just the character beats in this movie, which there are a lot of, but also some of the more action-y sequences. Like there are some battle sequences that you see in here, and they're very well handled, and they're beautifully shot as well. Dariusz Wolski's cinematography is incredible, and all of this is helped by some incredible performances and writing. I'll talk more about the writing later. Let's start with the performances first, because there's some very good ones. Jodie Comer, for starters, who plays Marguerite de Carouge, is nomination worthy in this. She's really good, and I would say this is maybe her best performance. I've seen her in Killing Eve before, of course, and she's really great in that. And very recently she was also a lot of fun in Free Guy, but I think she's incredible here and definitely worthy of, you know, being in the same discussion pool as an Oscar nomination. Matt Damon is also really good in the movie as Sir Jean. He does a really good job of sort of playing with the dualities of the character. On one hand, you are on his side because of certain decisions that he makes in regards to the allegation that has come forward, but at the same time, there is a side to him which you're not quite on board with, which again, I'll talk more about as I discuss the writing of the film. And Adam Driver is equally great as Jacques Legris. He does a really good job. Ben Affleck, let's talk about him for a second. He plays Count Pierre de Alencyon, and he's very hammy and over the top, but not in a bad way, in kind of a good way. It fits the character, it fits the sort of narrative that is woven around him, and I think he did a really good job. He seemed to be having a lot of fun with this role. I think that's the best way I can put it. He's not exactly playing a nice character, he's playing kind of an asshole. In fact, he's playing a huge asshole, but I think that's where that hamminess kind of comes into effect, right? Where it's like, you have to portray this guy to come off as a kind of a major prick. And the fact that the film accomplishes that is good. So let's talk about the writing of this movie. This was written by Nicole Holofcener, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon. And this film, essentially, like I said, it's got that main story, but it tries to also weave in a message in here. A couple of them, in fact. There are messages of toxic masculinity in this, the idea of inherent misogyny that exists within societies, and how those aspects of it influence decisions going forward, especially when Marguerite comes forward with the allegation, because the moment she does, the first question everybody has on their minds is, how do we know you're telling the truth? What if you're just lying for money or attention? And you know, you do realize that if you're lying, the repercussions can be disastrous. In that time, it was like death. So basically, if she's lying, she dies. And in the case of the duel, if de Carouge loses the duel, then the eyes of God, they're not telling the truth, and so death will become like the only way of absolution. Now, when you think about those things, those sound extreme, but let's go over to today. Some of the things that this film tackles, they come up in today's conversations too. It's no surprise, even now, when someone comes forward with such allegations, obviously it's not like, you know, death by fire or something like that, of course not, but there's always a side of it which is like, you're trying to embarrass your family's name, and, you know, we don't want to associate with you unless you're telling the truth or something like that. And that happens in this movie too. It's what makes it a much more depressing, tragic story to watch unfold. The actual duel itself, when it happens, it isn't so much about watching swords clash or people go neck to neck in very brutal R-rated ways, which does happen. And, you know, in that sense, yes, you do get your money's worth over there, despite a deliberately slow pace to get you to that point. It's a 2-hour and 33-minute movie. But going back to the fact that it is also telling this larger story, the duel is more about that. And so you're not certainly watching it only from the sense of view of watching a cool action sequence play out. You also want to see how it works out, because at this point in time, they're going by a very backward system, but unfortunately aspects of it still existed today. And that's what makes it a little more tragic to watch. In fact, when I got done watching it, I remember I left the theater and I thought, okay, well, this should be an easy movie to review, right? But then, like I said, it's been a few days since I've seen it, because I was trying to figure out exactly how to place my thoughts together and how exactly to bring it forward in a review sense. And the film, like I said, it very cleverly weaves in this narrative with the 3 different chapters, the 3 different perspectives, to sort of go along the lines of like how each of these things have led to that. And that is a very compellingly told story, albeit one that drags at times. I think the second chapter, which focuses on Legree, does drag a bit, especially because he becomes, I guess this is minor spoilers, he becomes a squire in Pierre's guard, and so he spends a lot of time with Affleck, Adam Driver, and so there's some point of time in the movie where it just doesn't quite move much anymore. We're just sort of stuck there. But the film does a really good job of showcasing how certain things that happen in that moment eventually lead into another narrative, and then you see that part play out later on. It's like, oh, but if you remember that scene, that's the aftermath of this, and it's like, it's kind of interesting how that's been weaved too. That was maybe my only flaw in this movie, my only major flaw. I think it could have been a little more solidly done, like in terms of like telling those stories. I think a little more focus would have been great. But aside from that, I walked away from The Last Duel really loving it. And it's a film that I feel like is going to have a lot of different opinions, and I'm very curious to hear what each opinion is. I'm especially curious to hear from women critics. I want to hear from them on what they thought of this movie, because this is the kind of movie that invites that conversation, it invites conversation in general. I'm going to give The Last Duel a 9 out of 10. I want to talk about one more thing before I wrap up this review. This is currently bombing. It came out on 15th October in theaters, and then it's got an international rollout on that day and then a couple of days later in some other countries, but it's available now to see in theaters all over. But it's not making much money at all. That upsets me. It doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, because it released next to Halloween Kills, and Venom's international rollout was on October 15th as well, and then Dune has now come out in theaters, so it doesn't seem like it has much legs at all. But I feel bad about that, and if you get a chance to go see this movie, please do. Please pay for it. Support the movie. It's really, really good, and it's worth your time. I'm very sure of that. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. I have a few more coming out this week alone, so that should be fun. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.